Hey guys, it is round 4 of the Brisbane Pokemon TCG Top 16 Championship, and we've got the two best water decks in format. We've got Josh's Ice Rider and James's Suicune. Josh's list is the same one we saw as he played it in round 1 against Sammy and her new VMAX list. Josh is running a very straightforward Pokemon line, I guess you would say. He is running the 4-4-2 Inteleon line, running 2 of the Shady Dealings Inteleon. He's running the 4-3 Ice Rider Calyrex, and pretty much the rest of the deck is just dedicated to making sure his setup goes right. So obviously you need the 4 Marnie to get the energy onto your Pokemon, but everything else is just dedicated to searching out your pieces. You've got the 16 different ball search cards, you have the 3 Capacious Bucket, and from there you should be able to find whatever you need. This deck shouldn't brick too much, it's geared to be very consistent. Obviously, as with any deck, you can get a bum opening hand and not be able to do very much from that, but Josh's list is very consistent, and that's why he's here in round 4 competing for a spot in the top 4. Josh's opponent is James Williams. James is running the Suicune. Now, we have seen Suicune V a couple times today. The Fleet Footing lets you draw a card, which allows it to stave off some of those bad opening hands by letting you draw an extra card. You're a little bit less susceptible to just bricking and being in dead draw mode. Suicune also has the Blizzard Rondo attack, which does 20 damage, plus an additional 20 damage for each Pokemon on both players' benches. Now, this damage ordinarily caps out at 220, but James is running the Ludicolo here. Ludicolo's Enthusiastic Dance lets James's basic Pokemon's attacks do 100 extra damage on the turn that it's evolved. So the cap on James's Suicune's Blizzard Rondo here is 320. This, of course, is before accounting for things like Inteleon's Quick Shooting, but in some cases, it's very possible for James to knock out a VMAX Pokemon. That's what separates Suicune V from a lot of other attacking V and even VMAX Pokemon. A lot of decks struggle to set up to 320 damage, and obviously having 2 stage 2 lines in your deck can cause some problems. You draw the wrong pieces at the wrong time, but James's Inteleon line should allow him to find the pieces he needs to get a good setup going. Now, James is running 3 Melanie, similar to Josh's list. It's one less copy, of course, but given how quickly he's able to go through the deck, and especially that Suicune V doesn't need to be recharged like Ice Rider Calyrex, you only really need the 3 Melanie to get your attackers set up during the game. You also run the 1 copy of Raihan that can also accelerate the energy. Instead of running 8 energy like an Ice Rider list would, you want to run Capture Energy. This lets you add extra Sobbles and Suicunes and even Lotads to your board. This also helps with your damage cap. Every Pokemon you can get onto the bench obviously increases your damage with Blizzard Rondo. Now, the rest of James's trainers are fairly standard here. He's running Professor's Research, Marnie, and Boss's Orders. He's running 12 of the ball search cards. He's also running Capacious Bucket. He's also got the funny tech card of Echoing Horn in there. The Echoing Horn lets you put a Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench. This can set up a knockout with Boss's Orders, and it can also help you get the Blizzard Rondo damage. A lot of players that are playing into Suicune are careful not to bench too many Pokemon, trying to leave the Blizzard Rondo just short of a KO, but James can fix that math with that 1 copy of Echoing Horn. Now, the 2 Cape of Toughness will play a pretty important role in this matchup. These tool cards will get Suicune's HP to 260, which is 10 more than Josh's damage cap with the Max Lance from the Ice Rider. Now, ordinarily, an Ice Rider player might be able to fix that with the Quick Shooting Inteleon, but remember, Josh is not running the Quick Shooting Inteleon. Josh would instead have to rely on that Tool Scrapper in order to get rid of those Capes of Toughness. Should be an interesting match from these 2 players. Let's see which water deck comes out on top. Here we are, our players are getting set up for this round 4 clash. I believe either one of them could make the top 4 with a win here, although they might need other results to break their way. We've got Josh on the left, he is on the Nashville Worlds map, and James is on the top 8 Oceania map. Both these players tell me that their mats just fell off the truck one day and they found them, so pretty lucky. Those are some nice mats. Josh has a starter. James is mulliganing. Josh appears to have a Sobble in hand and a Path to the Peak. That Path to the Peak can come down pretty much immediately. James doesn't have a lot of recourse against a stadium here, so that fleet footing ability will be shut down for the entire game. James mulligans again. Josh will be getting 2 extra cards to start this game. Now in a matchup that seems fairly even on paper like this, giving away mulligans is kind of a sad thing to do, especially when James runs so many basic Pokemon, so we're hoping for a basic here so we can get the game started and we can get rolling. He does find one. There's the fist bump. Players are ready to go. James draws for turn, finds that Sobble. That is a good top deck. Especially if you don't have a way to find a Sobble, which doesn't seem like he can from what I can see of his hand. Basis Bucket is a very good find. James taking 2 water energy out of the deck. Now for both of these players, the best place for the water energy is usually in the discard pile, as that's where you are able to get your value from Melanie. James attaches water energy to Lotad. This will be helpful, as if James finds his way into a Suicune next turn, he can retreat into it with Lotad's 1 retreat cost. If James is able to find a Melanie, he can obviously start to get that Suicune charged up. Now it's Josh's turn. He replies with a Capacious Bucket of his own, getting those 2 water energy out of the deck. Path to the Peak is already in play, so we will not be seeing any fleet footing in this game here. Josh gets a Sobble of his own down. The players are having fairly decent starts. Obviously, James would probably want that energy onto an attacker, but it might not be hard for him to get something to work here. Although his hand doesn't seem too strong. I believe he'll be missing the Melanie for turn, as he doesn't have a V Pokemon in play yet. He will have to use the Drizzile he has access to find a different supporter. James is just going for a Keep Calling. Now this is a good attack if you don't have much else going on. You can grab 3 Rapid Strike Pokemon from your deck, 3 basic Rapid Strike Pokemon, and put them onto your bench. Suicune is not a Rapid Strike Pokemon, but the other Sobbles are, so this is a good way to get your engines rolling. The Lotad has a similar attack. Call for Family lets you take only 2 Pokemon, but you can take any basics, so you can even take Suicune with this. But with the way James's board is set up, he should be able to get a Suicune and a Melanie next turn without any trouble anyway. He also doesn't expose the Suicune to a potential boss play from Josh here. So, good thinking by James, getting that extra Sobble on the bench, knowing that it's probably likely to go down if Josh has even an average turn here. Josh is getting to work getting his Pokemon set up. He's evolved into a Drizzile and he's getting a Sobble on board. He has the Ice Rider in hand, as well as the energy in the boss, so really good idea by James to not bench that Suicune. He would have given up 2 prizes there. Now, James has the potential to really pop off here, but he will need a lot of cards to kind of get through this turn and get into the rest of the game. He can get the Suicune and get it attacking this turn, but that Ice Rider VMAX is already 2 energy on it and can fire off a Max Lance for 250 at any time, so James ideally wants Suicune, Melanie, Energy, and the Cape of Toughness. And even if he gets all those things, Josh could still find the 1 copy of Tool Scrapper he plays in his deck, but James does need to get something happening here. He is a little bit behind at this point in the match already. James finding his Drizzles. He has the Suicune on board, he has the Melanie here. And Melanie will draw him into 3 extra cards. Nice thing about Melanie is it does give you a way to find the things that you're looking for. You don't find everything you're after all the time, but being able to free up a Drizzle for something else. So if James were to find the Cape here, he doesn't have to use one of his Shady Dealings Drizzles to look for it. He can just save that for something else in a later turn, like another Marnie, or perhaps that Echoing Horn could play a role in this game, who knows. Looks like James is just choosing to thin his deck again. Eyeing up that Capacious Bucket and the Water Energy. So yeah, his order of operations here, it all makes sense. Everything's there for a reason. There's the Quick Ball. He's getting another Suicune ready. He's probably resigned to the fact that this first Suicune isn't gonna last very long here in this game 1. So James fires off a Blizzard Rondo, does a respectable 160 damage. This puts the Ice Rider in a 2-shot range. James will only need to hit for another 160 next turn, and now that Josh has benched the Ice Rider, he can guarantee that with a Melanie and an Energy attachment. So now the pressure's on Josh a little bit to get his setup going. Obviously he has the Ice Rider attacking right now, but he needs to get his benched Ice Rider V a little bit more set up, as it will be taking the place of this Ice Rider when it inevitably gets knocked out. So there's the Melanie onto the bench Ice Rider. He has the Energy to attach manually from hand as well, so interesting. Josh instead chooses to attach the Water Energy to the Inteleon. Now the Inteleon is not a bad attacker. It has 160 health and it only gives up 1 prize when knocked out, so if your opponent can't really boss their way around it, it can be annoying to deal 160 damage only to get 1 prize for it. That Aqua Bullet attack does 120 damage for 2 Water Energy, which obviously Josh has no shortage of in this deck. The 20 damage to the bench can be relevant here or there, but I don't see that really happening without the quick shootings in the deck. It's James's turn now. He has gone for the Raihan. Raihan lets him attach a Water Energy from his deck to one of his Pokemon. If he does that, he can search his deck for any card. James taking that Capture Energy, just wants to get his bench full. Gets that Lotad. Gets the Shady Dealings as well. Now I imagine that Yeah, looks like James is eyeing up the scoop up net and the cape. He takes both of these. The cape will protect Suicune from being knocked out by a Max Lance next turn. Now that's where the 20 damage ping from the Inteleon could come in. Obviously if James has a Suicune with 250 damage on it and that goes to the bench, the 20 damage from Aqua Bullet would knock it out. These are all hypotheticals though. Obviously the match could play out differently to how I'm just describing it. Now James has scooped up the Shady Dealings Inteleon. He's used the Drizzile. So yeah, he's just cycling through his Pokemon a little bit. Players are discussing something. I think James is just pondering where to put that quick shooting damage. It's not completely obvious where you might put it. 20 damage onto that Ice Rider V is good, but yeah, it seems like Josh is under no pressure to evolve that and stumble headfirst into getting his best attacker knocked out. He's happy to wait it out a turn and start putting some pressure on James with that Aqua Bullet. And Josh is cutting off one of James's options here. Boss's orders for that Lotad will prevent James from getting Enthusiastic Dance Ludicolo set up next turn. This means Josh can basically evolve into Ice Rider VMAX for free, without any danger of him losing the game there by a VMAX knockout. Suicune's damage obviously capping at 220 if both players' benches are full and no other damage modifiers are in effect. So there we are, we do see that Aqua Bullet knocking out Lotad and putting Suicune within range of a Max Lance. So James in a lot of trouble here. Josh is now down to his final two prizes. He might have to consider attacking with an Inteleon of his own, strange as that might sound, just buy himself a couple turns here if he can. James gets that second Suicune into play. He could set that up if he can find that Cape of Toughness. I'm not sure from that deck search that it's in the deck, however, so... And James already has used his Raihan, so the Aqua Bullet will be kind of difficult to get going. Yeah, that Cape of Toughness is missing. That second cape, probably in the prizes. I don't believe James used or discarded it at any point. James making good use out of these scoop up nets. He's recycling his Shady Dealings Inteleons here. He's used Shady Dealings, I haven't kept count, but at least 4 or 5 times in this match. James takes the knockout with Blizzard Rondo. Yeah, so James kind of manied there out of desperation. He just hoped that of the 5 cards that Josh was to draw, that a Water Energy or Melanie wasn't one of them. It's a very slim chance, but you played your outs. So James recognises that his path to victory was kind of a narrow one, but he did what he could anyway to try and make that work. So Josh takes game 1 here. He simply promoted Ice Rider VMAX and just attached energy. That's how simple some of these some of these games can be if you get your Ice Rider setup rolling. If you have a consistent setup and you just get energy on your horses all the time, it's no trouble. You just start swinging for those 2 energy and you do some real damage. Now I think we're about to see the first fleet footing of the match here. James is going to go through his deck first. He has Water Energy in hand and Capacious Bucket. I think it is good to go for Capacious Bucket before going for Fleet Footing, as the only thing you don't want to draw into in this deck is Water Energy. Fleet Footing does find him Capture Energy, which is just about the best find you could ask for on turn 1. James will be getting a very strong bench going. You see the 2 Sobbles, the Lotad and the Suicune on the bench. So this is a strong turn 1. You couldn't really ask for much more if you're the Suicune player. Josh's hand, however, is still terrific. 2 Level Ball. He's got the Water Energy, he's got Ice Rider for next turn. He is ready to start swinging as well. Josh will be putting that second Sobble on the bench, and I imagine saving the other Level Ball just to use it for next turn and get that Drizzile into play. Josh thinks it over, but I really don't think there's too much more for him to do right here this turn. He can get some pretty important damage here with the Pierce. That Pierce could do 40 damage. That sets up a knockout with Max Lance, even if James can get the Cape of Toughness onto that Suicune. There's the Fleet Footing once again from James. He missed that entirely in game 1 as Josh got the Path to the Peak down immediately, just stopping James's ability to get that passive draw going. And it seems to be working out well for James. He's having a very strong setup here. If he could find Ludicolo and the Rare Candy, he would be able to get a knockout on this Ice Rider here. He'd be putting Josh way behind here in this game too. So there's the Melanie. What does he find? He gets Cape of Toughness, and so he has a Rare Candy in hand. He has Evolution Incense as well. He has this if he wants it. There's the Capacious Bucket. James just getting those Water Energies out of his deck. That's not where he really wants them. There's the Evo Incense. I think he's going for it. There it is. There is the Ludicolo. We'll be seeing the enthusiastic dancing going on here. James would be hitting for 160 ordinarily, but with the extra 100 damage, that is enough to knock out the Ice Rider V. Josh is now a long way behind in this game too. James has already taken 2 prizes, and yeah, it looks like James can pretty much just hunt down whatever Josh puts down here. James even has the other Lotad in play, so if he finds the Scoop Up Net and another Rare Candy, he can pretty much repeat what he did last turn and get the Ludicolo back into play and try and hunt down the Ice Rider with a Boss's Orders or something. Josh is making good use of his Drizziles here. He's trying to get a strong setup going here. I believe he's eyeing up that Melanie. His hand is not great, so he does need to draw cards. The Melanie is a great way to do that. Even if it's only 3 cards, Melanie is such a proactive play. Getting an energy on your attacker and drawing cards is just phenomenal. We saw that in Welder, which is basically the predecessor to Melanie. It let you accelerate fire energy to Pokemon and draw cards, similar to the way Melanie does. Welder saw some widespread success and won a world championship, so and Josh draws some cards. His hand is not looking too hot for the next turn. He can get some energy onto his Pokemon and get them ready for next turn. He does have the Max Lance next turn potentially. James might not even need the Lotad play if he could find... Oh no, sorry, he would be 10 short if he went for the quick shooting route, so he would need to find Scoop Up Net. He does have the rare candy in hand. He would also need to find Boss's Orders, however. The energy is no trouble. We did see the Fan of Waves take the capture energy, but James obviously still has the water from last turn when he used Capacious Bucket. So there's the Shady Dealings. There's Boss's Orders. James would have found the... Not sure if James has the Scoop Up Net yet. I couldn't really see his hand here. There it is. There's the Scoop Up Net. Rare candy is in hand. James will be firing off another Blizzard Rondo, this time for 280 damage. Oh, interesting. James had the candy and the Ludicolo in hand. He could have taken out this Suicune, chooses not to. There we go. So that was a quick sequence of events here. James hits the Ice Rider for less than a knockout. Josh's hand is pretty bricked, so he can only respond by attaching energy and firing off a Max Lance for knockout. James responds with a knockout of his own, and Josh realizes that he can't keep up in the prize race if James has only one left, so here we are going to a game 3. That's how quick some of these matchups can be. If you have water attackers that only need 2 energy, yeah, the game can become really quick back and forth with these heavy hitting water attackers doing about 200 damage plus per turn. It's basically about which player can sort of keep up that intensity longer. Now James mulligans again. This is his 3rd mulligan of the match so far. Especially not ideal as Josh is going first, so Josh will get to see an 8th and a 9th card free of charge here. His hand's already looking incredible. He has the Path of the Peak in hand, 2 level balls and a quick ball. Okay, so his 8th and 9th card weren't that amazing. He got the Fan of Waves and the Air Balloon. Those aren't spectacular cards right now. But there's the Path of the Peak, guaranteeing that we will see no more fleet footing in this match. If you're a fan of fleet footing, this is where the video ends for you, I'm afraid. Josh is going through his deck with that quick ball, getting his Ice Rider out. And he has energy in hand as well, so his hand is alright. He can't Melanie next turn, as he doesn't really have the pieces to get water energy in this card and find a supporter. Josh could just as easily go for something like a Professor's Research next turn and just find the water energy naturally. He does run 8 copies. James has not started too bad. This is pretty good. He's found Capacious Bucket yet again. An ideal card to have in your opening hand. He has 3 Sopples on board, and the Suicune is on deck with an energy. In some rare cases, the Suicune player can get the attack going first. Going second on turn 1. Does require a Melanie and a Quick Ball and an energy usually, but James doesn't quite have all those pieces. Now the air balloon is coming in pretty strong here for Josh. He will be able to retreat that Drizzile without investing any energy onto it. This means that that Ice Rider can go for Rider the High King, going turn 2nd. Josh has a pretty ideal setup going on here. Both players have very few bench Pokemon, so this Suicune won't be doing a terribly great amount of damage here. James would need to fill up his bench even just to hit 140. He will also need Cape of Toughness just to survive another turn with that Suicune. But James does have access to Drizzile, so I think we'll be seeing him put something together this turn. There's the Quick Ball. Quick Ball discards the Water Energy. James should have Water Energy in hand from last turn from the Capacious Bucket, so at the very least he'll be getting an attack going. There's the Scoop Up Net, he's getting that Drizzile going again. There's the Melanie. James's hand is pretty bleak, so he'll be counting on this Melanie to get him out of trouble. He won't be able to use Shady Dealings again this turn, however, so really counting on that Melanie to just get him something like a continuation card for next turn. Just something like a Drizzile or an Evolution Incense. Interesting, he takes the Raihan instead of the Melanie. He was eyeing up the Melanie, but takes the Raihan instead. He realizes that his hand is not strong. Takes the Cape of Toughness. Now this is interesting. It guarantees the Suicune will survive another turn, but it immediately puts James into top deck mode. Now with the rise of these Inteleona engines in decks, top deck mode is not such a bad place to be. You have all your Drizziles as outs. You also have the Evolution Incense and the Level Balls as outs to some kind of trainer card to get you out of trouble here. Usually at least a quarter of your deck is way out of trouble. So it looks like James top decks a Capture Energy. That last turn went a bit quick. We had another little battery meltdown there. We obviously can't deal with the heat of good games, so battery melted down a bit, but I think we can pick up from the context that Josh attacked with a Max Lance for 250 damage here. Looks like Josh is eyeing up the Aqua Bullet finisher. He already has an energy on that Drizzile on the bench, so he would just need to evolve it and find another energy. He could keep that Calyrex out of trouble. He could also just start attacking with a 1 Prizer. That's always a good spot to be in if you can do it. And if you have a good attacking 1 Prizer in your deck, which Josh certainly does. He has 2 of them in fact. So we're still kind of early into this game 3. Josh has 5 prizes to James's 6, but both their attackers have some pretty substantial damage on them. If Josh can't find a way to force Oh, Josh misses the attack entirely. He's hasn't been able to find that water energy, so looks like he'll be missing out on the knockout in the Suicune. James takes advantage of that, getting the knockout of the Blizzard Rondo. Josh, however, has the 3-prize turn if he wants it. He evolves into that Drizzile. Going through his deck, he could target down something like a Sobble or a Drizzile on the bench. It looks like he... Okay, so it looks like he's choosing to Marnie, or at least take that money for another turn. There's the Tool Scrapper. That Tool Scrapper just gets a knockout straight away on the Suicune. No need to mess around with silly boss's orders shenanigans. You just get the knockout as soon as the cape leaves the Suicune there. There we go. A mid-turn knockout. It's always interesting to see those happen. James, the player who's suffered the knockout, is left with the choice of what to promote in the middle of your opponent's turn. That is never a fun position to be in. Chooses to promote the Sobble. So just like that, Josh is going to go down to 2 prizes this turn. He can put the Aqua Bullet damage on Suicune, which effectively renders the other Cape of Toughness in the deck useless, as Josh can just set up for the Ice Rider VMAX attack next turn and win the game. Josh is further protecting himself by getting another Ice Rider into play. It's feasible that James could find a boss and a Ludicolo play next turn. No, it doesn't seem like it with his hand as small as it is, but... So yeah, we do see the Aqua Bullet knockout. The Suicune takes that all-important 20 damage. James is just considering his options here. It's a tricky turn. It's game 3 obviously, and the players haven't burned up that much time, so still be worth it to play it out, but it's not looking great. Either one of those Ice Rider Vs could evolve next turn, and it would be a little bit too much for James to overcome, especially if he can find that water energy. Josh. Now, if James didn't use his Raihan earlier, he could also begin attacking with the Inteleon, attacking with that Aqua Bullet of his own, but 120 damage per turn, it just hits a bit differently against these 3-prize decks. Obviously, the 20 snipe just isn't quite as good when it's on a 320 HP Pokemon. When it's on a 260 HP Pokemon, that's usually bringing it into range, where we've seen that a couple of times with Josh in this match. Just getting that Aqua Bullet damage, or at least threatening it in some cases. So James has a good board going. He is 180 damage this turn. So he attacks with the Blizzard Rondo, and Josh just shows that he has it. His water energy and the evolution. Josh takes this round 4 match 2 games to 1.
Oh, Intelleon's very good.
Who's Intelleon?
My Intelleon.
Okay.
The 20 snipe is very good.